Today on Nancy Drew Book Reviews, I'm reviewing Nancy Drew Diaries number 4, first published in September 2013. I'm going to start with the elephant in the room. This book is short, as in 60 pages shorter than all 3 books that preceded it. The sad part is that you could easily remove another 30 pages from the book without much issue. The book begins with Nancy Drew and her 2 friends, Bess and George. The 3 of them want to establish vague continuity with the original Nancy Drew series, so they're going to spend the weekend camping at Moon Lake, near Avondale. Avondale is a small town, and our heroes arrive just in time for a mystery. Pages, the local bookstore, was recently set on fire, shortly before a book signing with famous mystery author Lacey O'Brien. The unknown arsonist started the fire near the bookstore's chandelier in hopes that the fire department would blame it on faulty wiring. The crazy part? This is exactly what happened in Lacey's newest mystery novel, Burned. After this, Nancy meets Alice Ann Marple, owner of the nearby Cheshire Cat Inn. Alice says everyone in town knows Lacey because she went to Avondale High School. Lacey has a cabin on the northeast part of the lake, but she refuses to speak with any visitors. I'm not sure why. Either she's reclusive or she's trying to hide from YouTube reviewers who give her books horrible ratings. At the end of Chapter 2, Nancy discovers her wallet is stolen! Dun dun dun! Nancy goes back to the inn and she picks up her missing wallet. That pointless cliffhanger was resolved quickly. Before leaving town, Nancy overhears a conversation with Paige Samuels, owner of the ruined bookstore. Paige drops a suspicious piece of paper which reads 9-1-14. Nancy ponders what it could mean. Could this be the humongous clue which solves the mystery? Nancy and her friends go canoeing to Lacey's cabin on the lake when the bad weather turns worse. A lightning storm starts, the canoe capsizes, and our heroes almost drown. Lacey is on the shore watching the entire disaster, but instead of helping Nancy and her friends, Lacey runs into the cabin, locks the doors, and calls the police to arrest our heroes as trespassers. Lacey, this is why you have no friends. The boating misadventure isn't a total loss, though. At least the sheriff has a hunky nephew for Bess to flirt with. Through hunky nephew, Nancy learns that someone stole an art sculpture made by Lacey's husband. This is exactly like Lacey's mystery novel, Framed. And the event on the lake was like her other novel, Drowned. Gee, I hope the copycat criminal moves on to Lacey's 4th book, Someone Gives Arglefump $1 million. Chapter number 5, gives us a brief summary of Lacey's mystery novels. It's too bad these books aren't real, because they all sound much more interesting than this book. After all, the most exciting thing Nancy does in this chapter is wonder what the 9-1-14 note could mean. Is it a numeric code? Is it an important date? Someone's ID number? Nancy, it's a random post-it note that a complete stranger dropped. Let it go already! To complete the filler, a prowler appears at the cabin that night. Admittedly, this part is a good mix of interesting and scary, but the prowler subplot is abandoned for the rest of the book. The ending hand-waves this section, saying 9-1-14 is a locker combination, and the prowler was a bear. It's a complete letdown. They spend 2 whole chapters on this material, only to brush it aside at the end with a lame 1-sentence explanation. The next day, Nancy goes into town and interviews the 2 victims. Paige doesn't have much to say which is of interest, beyond revealing Lacey O'Brien's real name. The art museum owner is more useful. He explains the particulars of the crime. The sculpture was kept inside a locked room with only 2 keys. One belongs to the museum owner, who keeps it safe in an obvious hiding spot where anyone could steal it. The other key belongs to a group of writers who meet on the premises. Naturally, the group elected Lacey O'Brien as its queen because she's the only author in town who makes money. Nancy examines the crime scene, where she finds a strange-looking scarf, and I'm just kidding. Nancy doesn't investigate either crime scene because she is a horrible detective. Nancy wraps up her interviews by talking with Lacey O'Brien, who is actually a nice person once you get past all the tried to arrest Nancy stuff. Lacey has a flimsy alibi for the crime. She answered a phone call shortly after the fire, so Nancy decides Lacey is innocent. The two of them discuss the case together, but wouldn't you know it, the famous mystery writer and the famous detective have no idea how to go about solving a real mystery. Nancy decides that 3 10-minute conversations is more than enough detective work for one day, so she calls it quits. She receives a typewritten threatening message, which starts a 2-chapter search for a typewriter. This wild goose chase is slightly more interesting than the 2 filler chapters in the first half of the book, but I'm going to skip over it and jump to the conclusion. The typewriter belongs to the writers group that meets in the museum. Nancy asks for a membership list, something she should have done 4 chapters ago, and when she sees a familiar name, she solves the mystery. Instead of calling the police, though, Nancy decides to string everyone along for another chapter as she confirms her suspicions. Eventually, they catch the criminal red-handed, thanks to dumb luck. I mean, thanks to Nancy's genius detective skills. I've been insulting this book for a while now, but credit where credit is due. This part of the book held my interest. I legitimately wanted to know who the culprit was. The culprit is Paige Samuels, the bookstore owner. She framed Lacey for the crimes because Lacey stole her high school prom date 20 years ago. And that's where the book lost my interest. The remaining 3 pages of the book rush through an explanation of the mystery, which brushes aside a good amount of important information. The end. Post-book follow-up. As you could probably tell from my review, my main issue with the book is the filler. I'm being extra harsh here, because the book is 60 pages shorter than normal. I'm sorry, but when you cut out a literal third of a book, there should be no filler left whatsoever. It's really bad when your book is at least 4 chapters shorter than normal, but it still has at least 4 chapters of filler. I'm not completely against filler. Unnecessary material can serve a purpose, such as tone setting, character development, and giving the story a sense of realism. In fact, the second to last chapter of this book is a perfect example of good filler. It doesn't add much to the storyline, but it creates a lot of suspense. The filler in this book ranges from okay to interesting to get on with the story already. You don't notice it the first time around, but when you reread this book, yeah, you notice that a good portion of it is unnecessary. Again, I'm not saying that this is badly written, but it doesn't pass my tolerance level considering the length of this book. Speaking of which, this book is double-spaced to make it seem twice as long as it really is. As such, I'm deducing a point from the final score. I give Nancy Drew Diaries Once Upon a Thriller a 2 out of 10.